Imagine a German soldier kneeling beside the body of a fallen American in the Ardennes. December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler had launched his final great gamble in the West. More than 200,000 German soldiers, supported by hundreds of tanks and assault guns, smashed through the snow-covered Ardennes forest in Belgium and Luxembourg. The goal was bold: split the American and British armies, capture the vital port of Antwerp, force the Western Allies into a negotiated peace before the Soviet army reached Germany. At first, the plan seemed to work. Poor weather grounded Allied aircraft. American units were caught by surprise. Entire divisions were forced to retreat. For a few days, Germany looked as if it might accomplish the impossible. But beneath the surface, another battle was already being fought. Not with rifles, not with tanks, but with factories, railroads, cargo ships, and supply trucks. The average American infantryman carried far more than ammunition. Inside his pockets and backpack was the product of one of the greatest logistical systems ever created. Every soldier received carefully planned field rations. The famous K-ration was compact enough to fit inside a pocket, but contained enough calories to keep a man fighting during combat. Each box usually included canned meat or cheese, crackers, sugar, coffee, chewing gum, matches, toilet paper, and often a small chocolate bar. It wasn't gourmet food. Many American soldiers complained about eating K-rations for too long, but compared with what many German soldiers were receiving during the winter of 1944, it seemed almost luxurious. Germany's supply system was collapsing. Years of Allied bombing had destroyed railways, bridges, factories, and fuel depots. Every gallon of gasoline had become precious. Trucks sat idle because there was no fuel. Trains arrived late or not at all. Food that should have reached the front often never arrived. By late 1944, many German frontline soldiers survived on black bread, thin soup, and whatever they could scavenge from abandoned villages. Winter clothing became another crisis. Some frontline units still lacked proper insulated boots. Gloves wore out faster than replacements could arrive. Wet socks remained wet for days. Frostbite became almost as dangerous as enemy bullets. Then came the shock. As German soldiers searched abandoned American positions, they kept finding the same things: fresh socks, extra gloves, warm clothing, medical supplies, chocolate, coffee, letters from home, personal photographs, pocket-sized books distributed through the Armed Services Editions program, so soldiers could read during quiet moments. To an exhausted German infantryman, these small comforts told an important story. America wasn't merely sending soldiers into battle, it was sending an entire nation with them. Back in the United States, factories operated day and night. Millions of workers, including women who had entered industrial jobs in record numbers, built tanks, aircraft, trucks, artillery shells, uniforms, boots, radios, and medical supplies around the clock. The United States wasn't fighting one war. It was supporting campaigns across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific, all at the same time. Yet ships continued crossing the Atlantic loaded with food, fuel, ammunition, replacement vehicles, and winter clothing. The scale was almost impossible to imagine. By the later years of the war, American aircraft production had reached a scale that exceeded the combined output of Germany and Japan. Thousands of trucks rolled off assembly lines every month. Cargo ships carried mountains of supplies across dangerous oceans despite the constant threat of German U-boats. To many German officers, the numbers were becoming impossible to ignore. Every tank they destroyed, another seemed to appear.
Every aircraft they shot down, more filled the skies. Every American unit pushed back, another arrived with fresh equipment. For the ordinary German soldier, kneeling beside that fallen American, the chewing gum and chocolate weren't what mattered most. They were symbols. Symbols of an economy so vast, that even a 19-year-old private fighting in a frozen Belgian forest could carry comforts that many German soldiers hadn't seen in months. And deep down, many of them were beginning to understand what that meant. The deeper German forces pushed into the Ardennes, the more obvious the difference became. American soldiers were certainly exhausted. Many had gone days without proper sleep. Some fought in freezing foxholes with temperatures far below zero. Many suffered frostbite. Some ran dangerously low on ammunition during the opening days of the offensive. But one thing continued to arrive: supplies. The American logistical system never stopped working. Thousands of truck drivers worked around the clock. Engineers repaired damaged roads almost as quickly as they were destroyed. Railroads delivered fresh equipment to the front. Medical teams evacuated the wounded, while replacement troops continued moving toward Belgium. Behind every American rifleman stood an industrial machine unlike anything the world had ever seen. General Dwight D. Eisenhower repeatedly emphasized that logistics was fundamental to military success. The Battle of the Bulge became one of the greatest examples of that truth. Hitler's offensive depended on speed. German commanders hoped to capture American fuel depots because they simply didn't have enough gasoline to reach Antwerp. Many German armored units began the offensive with critically limited fuel supplies, expecting to refuel from captured Allied fuel depots. Some crews carried extra fuel in drums tied to the backs of their tanks. Others planned to refuel from captured American supplies. It was an enormous gamble. As the battle continued, that gamble failed. American engineers destroyed bridges. Fuel dumps were evacuated or blown up before German troops could capture them. Convoys kept bringing more gasoline to Allied forces, while German vehicles slowly ground to a halt. In many places, perfectly good tanks had to be abandoned, not because they had been destroyed, but because they had run out of fuel. The same story repeated across the battlefield. American artillery continued firing. Fresh ammunition kept arriving. Damaged trucks were replaced. Broken radios were exchanged. Winter uniforms continued reaching frontline units. German commanders watched their own supplies disappear faster than they could replace them. By late December, the weather finally cleared. That changed everything. Hundreds of Allied fighter bombers filled the skies. They attacked German columns trapped on narrow roads. Fuel trucks exploded. Supply vehicles burned. Bridges became death traps. The offensive that had shocked the Allies only days earlier now began collapsing under the weight of its own shortages. For the German infantryman, the war was changing in ways he could no longer ignore. Every captured American position revealed another reminder of the enemy's strength. Boxes of ammunition, medical kits, warm blankets, fresh food, clean uniforms, portable radios, even holiday packages sent from families back home. Many American soldiers also received Christmas mail during the battle. Simple letters from parents, wives, children, or girlfriends. To a soldier freezing in the forests of Belgium, those letters meant far more than words. They reminded him why he was fighting. American morale wasn't built only on patriotism. It was strengthened by a nation that continued supporting its troops every single day. Germany's soldiers fought with extraordinary courage. Many continued fighting despite impossible odds. But courage alone could not replace fuel. It could not manufacture ammunition. It could not produce trucks, aircraft, or food. Factories won battles just as surely as soldiers did. By January 1945, the Battle of the Bulge was over. Germany had lost tens of thousands of experienced soldiers, hundreds of tanks, and precious equipment it could never replace. It was Hitler's final major offensive in the West. From that moment forward, Germany remained almost entirely on the defensive. When historians explain why the Allies won World War II, they often point to superior production. American factories built about 300,000 military aircraft during the war. They produced tens of thousands of tanks, hundreds of thousands of trucks, and millions of tons of ammunition and supplies. But statistics alone don't tell the whole story. Sometimes, history can be understood through something much smaller: a stick of chewing gum, a chocolate bar, a clean pair of socks, a warm pair of gloves, a letter from home folded inside a uniform pocket. To most people, they look like ordinary objects. But to a German soldier, fighting in the freezing winter of 1944, they represented something far more powerful. They represented a nation whose factories never stopped, whose ships never stopped sailing, whose supply trucks never stopped moving, and whose people never stopped supporting the young men fighting thousands of miles from home. Those weren't just comforts, they were proof. Proof that America possessed an industrial strength Germany could no longer match. The German soldier, searching that American's pockets, wasn't frightened by the chewing gum, or the chocolate, or even the letter. He was frightened by what those simple things represented. Because by the winter of 1944, many German soldiers already understood the truth. They were no longer fighting only the American army. They were fighting the full power of the American economy. And that was a battle Germany was no longer capable of winning. The items inside one soldier's pocket told the story of an entire war.